Hello, I'm joined by Matt Kelly, the Chief Technologist from IPC. Great to see you again, Matt. It's been a couple of years.
It has. Thanks for having me, Trevor.
Yeah, okay. So last time we spoke, you had established a committee, a panel to help you drive this factory of the future and to advise you on new technologies, etc. How has that performed and developed over the last 2 years?
Well, it's been tremendous, if I can say. It's our Chief Technologist Council. We have had it growing ever since its inception. I think we're up to 16 or maybe even 17 different companies. The group includes OEMs, leadership from EMS as well as PCB elements. So we've got a nice cross-section of the industry there. We have, I think it's something over 300 years of collective experience from all the participants. Most are top leaders within the company, so this includes fellows, vice presidents of divisions, directors. So it's a very nice mix of business direction and technical capability. So it's been a really nice growing group.
So how is that translated into action with your group towards Factory of the Future and other projects that are Industry 4.0 related?
Yeah, it's a great question. It forms the basis of what we do. So, voice of customer is often forgot, but probably the most important step in any of this. So this is a really high-powered technical group coming to an industry forum, talking about two key things. One is real business challenges that they're facing within their companies, and two, the types of approaches and technologies and ways of working that may or may not be in play right now. Sometimes it's we wished we could do something, or we want to head in this direction. So it's very future looking, applying the solutions, the technologies to those business problems. So it's absolutely fundamental in how we shape what we say is important to the industry.
Right. So who are the technology leaders then? I mean, who is implementing a really strong, robust automation strategy, and where do we find these companies?
Yeah, well, one thing that's been evident over the past 2 years is I'll answer that first kind of from a geography perspective. My estimate over the past 2 years is that North American implementation of this is somewhere between 5, 8, maybe even 10 years behind that of Europe and Asia.
Wow.
And it's the other key message that we're really trying to communicate, especially this year, is that time is of the essence. Every day that goes by of contemplating, talking about it, show me or tell me that I should really be doing this, is a day that goes by that there are people that really get this and are actually implementing and executing right now today. So the gap is widening every day. Every day.
How do you think you're going to be able to encourage your members, your North American members, to really get on board with that?
Yeah, well, it is happening. That's another encouraging sign. I think COVID has thrown an absolute huge curveball in all of this. But if you can imagine here in the next couple of years, as we hopefully can start to emerge a little bit out of this, is that we have actually seen a lot of transformation already. The basis of this is digital transformation, as we all know. There's been a tremendous amount of investment in this area, and now people are starting to ask, how can I actually use this data? What can I do to contextualize, and taking it to quality improvements, return on investment, yield, scrap reduction. So we're now starting to see an opportunity where they're marrying the investment of these technologies, but actually being able to show the results in the business realm.
Yeah, I mean, one of the issues I find, Matt, is that engineers don't like change. I mean, they like to establish a process, and they don't like to move it. And it really means that you need to get to the OEMs and the designers, really, to try and get that message across.
Yeah. Well, for example, you asked a little bit earlier about who's leading this. So on our CTC, we have top technical leadership from IBM, from Siemens, Google, Microsoft, Hewlett-Packard, Bosch. Right. From the OEM side, we have top tier representation from EMS providers, including Jabil, Flex, Celestica, Zollner out of Europe. And on the PCB technology side, leadership out of TTM, Sanmina. So that it's a really nice cross section. It's a very strong group of people trying to solve and identify these problems.
Okay, so let's move on to some of the other areas in there. I mean, first of all, do you see additive PCBs becoming having a much more significant role in the future?
Absolutely. In fact, this past November, we just issued a new report on advanced packaging technologies and the need for understanding this and bolstering this from a North American perspective. Since then, we've received reports that while it was a North American focused study, a lot of that pertains to the state in Europe as well. So it's definitely on everybody's mind. In terms of how important additive manufacturing is, we're definitely seeing blurring of these lines. So what used to be out of play for IC substrates, specifically for design points, lines, and spaces, were just out of reach for the PCB. So there's a nice division there. You can go to Best Buy today and buy laptop with sub 1 mil lines and spaces. Right. People don't realize that, but now we're into micron line spacing, which is now the entry point for IC substrates. So I think that's why you're starting to see PCB suppliers getting interested in this IC substrate demand with the chip shortage, because those design points are getting so close to the IC substrates.
So one of the other issues out there, and I'm going through a number of points here because there's a lot I want to try and get through in this interview, is of course the supply chain issues. And one of the key industries that's done well during COVID has been these companies that are using digitalization and APIs to be able to source components from the manufacturer, see exactly where the stock is, what the current price is, etc. Do you see that being becoming much more prevalent going forward?
Well, I think it's. I don't know if I can actually give you a blanket answer to that, because it really depends on the company that, what their trusted supplier assurance programs are. There's going to be some companies out there that will never use distributors. It's always got to be straight from source, and that's never going to change. Right. There's challenges with that, especially for supply shortages. But I think you're right. I think that the digitization of the supply chain, kind of the back doors that non-manufacturing type of elements, really haven't been explored to their fullest, and I think that's a great example where there's really some good value there.
Yeah. Okay. Another area that's emerging, when I was at Productronica last year, it was everywhere, is the topic of sustainability. And what is IPC doing around that topic to try and help its members?
Well, if you read our mission statement with our Factory of the Future initiative, it actually has sustainability in there. Right. And this is tricky. This is not going to be easy to solve, but we had just announced as well another program, our ESG program, mid last year for IPC, and environmental, sustainable, and corporate governance included in literally everything that we're trying to do. So we don't look at ESG as a check mark to check off, and we're doing it. It's I think the tricky part with it is that it needs to be embedded in everything we do. So it needs to be embedded in the design in the first place, and go all the way through the life cycle, so that we're not just throwing our cell phone in the garbage, talking about circular economy and those types of things, that you can actually either rework it or modularly update that. We're seeing some neat reports out of Dell and a few other companies where they're actually starting to design products with that kind of thing in mind. So we're definitely we're definitely aware of the need for this. Practically, what we're doing this year is we're really just trying to get our arms around the situation. So we have Kelly Scanlon under Chris Mitchell and Allison James. A whole variety of our team are trying to tackle this at a government level, but also at a tactical level. What needs to be done? For example, standardization. So there's a lot of corporate government standards that are going to be needed. Otherwise, you're just being this reporting churn, and nobody has time for that. Yeah. So it'll be interesting how this unfolds.
Well, it's interesting, but I mean, it's also something that standards always work as a lag behind technology. But technology is happening so quickly now that your work's going to be cut out for you, quite frankly, trying to keep up with it continuously going forward. Another thing that really was very high on the radar at Productronica was miniaturizations. A lot of companies moving into sub-5 micron space. Do you see advanced packaging becoming playing a much bigger role in IPC's future going forward?
Yeah, and I mentioned the report that we issued in November. We've seen huge response and traction from that. Mm-hmm. We are advising government, so NSC, the Department of Commerce, the Department of Defense, NIST, on what needs to be done. Advanced packaging is a very big interest to IPC. Again, we realize that there are some areas where we traditionally haven't worked, but with, again, these blurring of lines in terms of technologies, we actually see, I'll give you an example, some commonality between printed circuit board design and how that, and the materials and the processing, build-up additive type of technologies, how that is interplaying now between IC substrates and multi-layer PCBs, for example.
Well, you're talking about in the heterogeneous field, whether you're making the materials all compatible.
Yeah, I mean, we're not quite there yet. I mean, if you're looking at, advanced IC substrates, we're down into, 9 and 12 micron spaces.
Right.
PCBs are not there, but we are talking about, 25 microns, maybe 30 microns. So, it's getting close. And so the idea of additive build-up technologies with build-up additive films versus, subtractive laminography, those things are now coming into play. So that's where the interest for IPC is. There's a lot of, we'll call it pedigree that the IPC has with PCB technologies, and so we're trying to see how that can be applied for these new additive technologies.
It's a fascinating space right now. I agree with you. So, Matt, you've got a lot on your plate, I can tell you.
We'll see.
Yeah, but it's always fun to talk to you. So, thank you for joining us today.
That's great. Thank you.